Hello, welcome to my channel, Close Reading with me, Dr. Octavia Cox. And today I want to look at the wry and ironic splendour of Jane Austen, in particular in her novel Emma, which was first published in December 1815, although as you can tell there from the title page, it's dated 1816. So Emma is a novel in which things are very much kept hidden. They're kept hidden between the characters, but they're also kept hidden from the reader. Really, it's a novel of mysteries, of ideas about perspective, about who knows what, who doesn't know what, and the meaning of lots of different episodes really remains quite obscure, particularly the very first time that you read the novel. And that's why it's a novel that's really worth reading for a second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. time, because it's a totally different novel when you read it again from the novel it was the first time that you read it. So P.D. James, who's the British mystery writer, called Emma a detective novel. And I think that's a really apt phrase to use to describe it, because really, in many ways, the reader is a bit like a detective who's trying to work out what's going on from the clues that have been kind of laid out in the text for you. So today I want to look at how Austen plays with and challenges the reader, and perhaps even pokes fun at the reader. Before I forget, if you like this video, do please subscribe and hit the thumbs up. So Emma Woodhouse, we are told from the very, very beginning of the novel, this is the first sentence, Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever and rich. And this is actually a picture of an Italian princess, but I think she looks sort of suitably self-satisfied. I think she looks like she could be an Emma. And after all, Emma, of course, thinks of herself as the sort of princess of Highbury. So from the very beginning, we know that Emma Woodhouse is handsome, clever and rich, and then we're told that she seems to unite some of the best blessings of existence. And we might think when we first read this that the important part of that is the telling us all about the best blessings of existence. But actually, when we read it again, the word that is most important in that part of the sentence really is seemed. And there's an element of doubt that creeps in with the word seemed. So she seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, okay, but in what ways did she not unite them? In what ways did she not have the best blessings of existence? And really kind of bringing in the word seemed into the very opening lines of the novel is a really kind of crucial play by Austen, because it sets up from the beginning the idea that is central throughout the whole of the rest of the novel, that this is a novel of appearance versus reality, and that there is a kind of great disparity all the way through the novel between what seems to be and what it turns out actually is. So the narrative voice continues that the real evils indeed of Emma's situation were the power of having rather too much her own way and a disposition to think a little too well of herself. And again, this is still in chapter 1. So the narrative voice actually gives the reader a heads up. We should be on the lookout for this so-called evil throughout the rest of the novel. And the narrative voice really kind of teases Emma about her disposition to think a little too well of herself, and indeed encourages readers to smile at this foible of Emma's as well. And one of the ways in which Emma thinks well of herself, in fact, one of the things that Emma particularly prizes most highly in herself, is her powers of perception, her cleverness, her intellectual penetration. She really believes that she can see what other people can't see. And so from the very opening then, the narrative voice sets up this really important juxtaposition that we as readers should be really aware of. So on the one hand, we're told that Emma values her powers of perception. But then on the other hand, we're also told that she tends to think highly, perhaps too highly, of her own abilities. So the narrative voice has really put readers on their guard from the very opening chapter. And with this in mind, I want to look at today's passage. So the passage that I'm going to be looking at is a conversation between John Knightley and Emma about Mr. Elton. So John Knightley is Mr. Knightley, so the hero's brother, and also Emma's brother-in-law. So he's married to Isabella, who is Emma's older sister. And the passage shows just how many levels Austen's texts operate on. So there are at least 3 layers of meaning, including Austen teasing and poking fun at the reader and even warning readers not to think too highly of ourselves either. So just to give a bit of background then, Emma is trying to get Mr. Elton, excuse me. Oh, that was a bit of a slip. Mr. Elton married off to her friend Harriet Smith. And to Emma at least, this plan seems to be going well. So Emma sets up kind of various occasions trying to get Mr. Elton to fall in love with Harriet. So for example, this is the picture scene in which Emma draws Harriet. And this, I think, is a beautiful illustration from 1909 by C.E. Brock. And I think it's quite a sort of illustrative illustration. So Mr. Elton is frequently coming to look and in continual raptures, we're told, over the drawing. And Emma takes this as proof of Mr. Elton's love for Harriet. But the reader might note that Mr. Elton's compliments are really about the drawing more than they are about the sitter. So it seems as if he's actually complimenting Emma more than he's complimenting Harriet. So this is the conversation between John Knightley and Emma. And Emma starts, "Me?" she replied, with a smile of astonishment. "Are you imagining me to be Mr. Elton's object?" "Such an imagination has crossed me, I own, Emma, and if it never occurred to you before, you may as well take it into consideration now." "Mr. Elton in love with me? What an idea!" "I do not say it is so, but you will do well to consider whether it is so or not, and to regulate your behaviour accordingly. I think your manners to him encouraging. I speak as a friend, Emma. You had better look about you and ascertain what you do, and what you mean to do." "I thank you, but I assure you, you are quite mistaken. Mr. Elton and I are very good friends, and nothing more." And this really is not unreasonable advice from John Knightley. I mean, generally speaking, it is a good idea to consider, whether something is so or not, and act accordingly, to kind of self-evaluate. And it's certainly not advice to take offence at. But Emma's response, and she walked on, amusing herself in the consideration of the blunders which often arise from a partial knowledge of circumstances, of the mistakes which people of high pretensions to judgment are for ever falling into, and not very well pleased with her brother for imagining her blind and ignorant, and in want of counsel. So brother there means brother-in-law. So this then, just this small sentence here, is operating on 3 levels. So the first layer of meaning we might think of as a kind of straightforward layer of meaning. So it's Emma thinking about John Knightley. So Emma is amused, but also a bit cross with John Knightley for imagining her blind and ignorant. And then we have the second layer of meaning, the ironic layer. And this probably comes through more to a reader of a second reading, or third or fourth, and so on. It might not kind of be immediately apparent the first time you read it. But this second layer of meaning is really readers thinking about Emma. So the irony is that Emma says something that she doesn't realise applies to herself. Emma has high pretensions to judgment, and this is a mistake that she is falling into. So she is indeed being blind and is in want of counsel. So here as readers, we might laugh at Emma's blunder, and blunder is a very, very important word throughout this novel. So it's literally the word that Frank Churchill, for example, spells out in front of Jane Fairfax when they're playing the alphabet game. So we might laugh at Emma's blunder, we might smile at her folly, because we can see that Emma is misguided. And this is evidence of Emma's disposition to think a little too well of herself, and we have duly picked up on it. And it's almost as if the narrative voice and readers are in cahoots here, that we are on the inside of the circle. So we see what Emma does not see. And I think this is in part why Austen inspires such affection in her readers, is this kind of tone of irony which seems sort of almost conspiratorial. So it's saying we are in on the joke. We readers are in on the joke, and we are on the side of Austen because we understand what kind of ironic point is being made here. We see what Emma does not see. But we then move on to the third layer of meaning, which we might call meta irony. And this is where Austen and the narrative voice is thinking about readers. So Austen is warning us not to fall into the same trap as Emma and to think a little too well of our perception. So we might laugh at Emma at this moment, but before we laugh at her, we might want to reflect on whether or not we too are people of high pretensions to judgment, but who actually make mistakes and blunders. Before we laugh at Emma for thinking a little too well of herself, we should reflect on whether or not that applies to us too. We should, in effect, take John Knightley's advice. So in this scene, Emma amuses herself in the consideration of other people's blunders, and we too amuse ourselves in the consideration of Emma's blunders. So we might laugh at Emma for being blind, but are we being blind too? Should we readers laugh at ourselves for imagining a little too highly of our own perception? After all, we readers only have a partial knowledge of circumstances, and this is early on in the novel. Can we really suppose that we know everything that's going on? And I really doubt that a first-time reader does know exactly what's going on, because there's so much hidden in this novel that I think you get a gold star if you unpicked every single mystery the first time that you read Emma. So the first layer of meaning then is kind of Emma amusing herself in the consideration of John Knightley's blunders and his mistaken pretensions to judgment in her eyes. The second layer is readers amusing themselves in the consideration of Emma's blunders and her mistaken pretensions to judgment. And then the third layer is Austen, the narrative voice, amusing herself in the consideration of readers' blunders and our mistaken pretensions to judgment. So the irony is that we readers are doing exactly the same thing as Emma herself. So we are being smug in seeing that someone else is mistaken. So the real irony, beyond Emma using these words without realizing that they apply to her, is that we readers don't realize that they apply to us too. We're laughing at Emma. Austen is laughing at us. So just remember when you're reading Austen that she takes no prisoners, including her own readers. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this video. If so, do please subscribe and hit the thumbs up. And check out my other videos and comment below suggesting other Austen moments you'd like to take a closer look at.